Welcome to Anna and Sigmund's channel. We hope you enjoy our look at the more macabre people of our world. Enjoy. Many of you may not be aware of the name Ed Gein. He has been the subject of or inspiration for 13 major motion pictures, including Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, 3 on a Meathook, Maniac, and Childofgod. While he was convicted of only killing one person, the nature of his crimes are what distinguish him in the world of serial killers. This is the story of Ed Gein. Ed Gein was born August 27, 1906, in Plainsfield, La Crosse County, Wisconsin, to George and Augusta Gein, and was the younger brother to Henry by 5 years. George was a tanner, carpenter, and insurance salesman, and Ed learned the tanner's trade through him. George suffered from alcoholism, and Augusta was a fervently religious Lutheran. Augusta kept the family isolated from their community, chasing away anyone who even attempted to approach them, and punishing the boys if they tried to make friends. She taught the boys that women were natural prostitutes and instruments of the devil. Afternoons in the Gein household consisted of reading Bible verses that focused on the more morbid aspects of the scriptures. Gein's father died of his alcoholism in 1940, causing the brothers to take up odd jobs to help make ends meet. Along with carpentry, Ed was a popular babysitter for his neighbors. He seemed to have an affinity with children, and the families he sat for absolutely loved him. Gein adored his mother and doted on her incessantly, much to the consternation of his brother Henry. This led to the first questionable incident, which involved the death of his brother. Henry had hooked up with a divorced woman of 2 children and had decided to move in with her. This, of course, was against the wishes of their mother and caused a rift between the brothers. In the spring of 1944, the brothers were clearing the marsh vegetation on their farm by fire. The fire got out of control, and the fire department arrived to fight the blaze. The fire was not extinguished until that evening, and it was then that Ed reported his brother missing. Having only lanterns, the search was difficult. Eventually, Henry's body was found face down on the ground, and it seemed that he'd been dead for quite a while. An autopsy was not performed, as it was assumed he died from asphyxiation. What was questionable was the bruising found on his head. Had Ed killed his brother? No one questioned it at the time. Shortly after Henry's death, his mother suffered 2 strokes in short succession and died December 29, 1945, at age 67. To say that the death devastated Ed is a monumental understatement. She had been his mother, teacher, friend, and anchor to the world in general. He was utterly lost in the world without her. In an effort to soothe himself and attempt to maintain his connection with her, he sealed off her room and kept it almost as a temple. While the rest of the house that he used was later found to be filthy and squalid, his mother's room was pristine and immaculate. In the age of 1940s pulp magazines, Ed developed a taste for some very particular genres: death, Nazis, and cannibalism. While not necessarily an indicator of an evil mind, indeed, most who read these types of magazines are completely normal and never commit anything close to crimes, sheltered Ed Gein was a fertile mind for this new material. These topics, combined with his education from his mother and his views towards women, gave Ed a warped morality. Enter Bernice Warden. On November 16, 1957, Bernice Warden, a Plainsfield hardware store owner, was reported missing by her son. The son happened to be the deputy sheriff of the county, and he had found the cash register was open, a receipt for antifreeze sold to Ed Gein that day, and bloodstains on the floor. The police decided to investigate Gein and searched his property the following day. In a shed on the property, officers found Bernice Warden's body hung by her wrists with a rope and a crossbar at her ankles. She had been decapitated and was dressed like a deer. Her death had been a shot by a .22 caliber rifle, and her body had been mutilated after death. The officers searched the Gein house and this is what they found. Whole human bones and fragments. A wastebasket made of human skin covering several chair seats, skulls mounted on his bedposts, female skulls, some with the tops sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso, skin from shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, one Mary Hogan's face in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gein's potbelly stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, and the vulvae of 2 females judged to be about 15 years old, a belt made from human female nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, fingernails from female fingers. Gein was arrested on November 17, 1957, and interrogated by officials. Gein admitted to developing a fascination with female body parts, particularly genitalia and breasts. While his mother was alive, he had never been allowed to look at women's bodies, and upon her death, he had some freedom to do so. Holding on to his mother's views of women, Gein would not touch a live woman's body. Consequently, he developed a taste for exhuming female corpses from the local cemeteries. At first, he just dug them up, looked at them, and then reburied them. Over time, he began to take bodies that looked like or reminded him of his mother home with him. Using the skills he learned from his father's tannery trade, he removed the skin of the bodies and made many household items. At some point, shortly after his mother's death, he began to make a suit out of skin so that he could become her. Interestingly, Gein denied any acts of necrophilia because, among other things, they smelled bad. During the investigation, Gein confessed to the murder of Mary Hogan, the owner of a nearby tavern who had been reported missing in 1954. Her head was found in the house, but Gein would strangely claim he could not remember any details of the murder. Stranger still, he was never charged with her murder. While he became a suspect for several missing person cases in his county, the only charge ever laid against him was for the first-degree murder of Bernice Warden. The trial began on November 1, 1957, and Gein pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The court-appointed psychiatrist diagnosed him with schizophrenia and mental incompetence, and he was deemed unfit for trial. He was institutionalized at a mental hospital for the criminally insane. He remained there for over 10 years until 1968, when he was determined to be mentally fit. His new judge-only trial began on November 7, 1968, and 7 days later, he was found guilty and sentenced for the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Ed Gein died of lung cancer on July 26, 1984, and was buried in Plainsfield Cemetery. His gravesite became something of a pilgrimage destination for the more morbid and macabre, and bits of his tombstone were constantly chipped away, presumably to be kept as mementos. His gravesite was, in fact, stolen in 2000. It was found a year later, but has never been replaced. We hope you enjoyed our video and found it informative and entertaining. Please consider hitting the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. We really appreciate any support you give us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.